A bear begs Captain Brant for help, and what happens next is unbelievable. 3 soldiers lowered their weapons in disbelief as a fully grown brown bear crashed through their security fence, ran straight to their commander's office, and did something no wild animal had ever done before. It bowed its head and waited. When they discovered why this 800-pound predator risked death to seek human help, even the toughest military men couldn't hold back their tears. Captain Elias Vorn had seen his fair share of strange events during his long career in the military, but nothing in his experience could explain what was happening at Outpost Helix, hidden deep in a remote, unforgiving wilderness. Their base had dealt with everything from brutal storms to rogue aircraft, but a bear deliberately breaking through their defenses only to show submission. This was completely unheard of. The base was one of the nation's most secure facilities in the area, equipped with motion sensors, electric fencing, and round-the-clock armed patrols. Its primary mission was to monitor a vast stretch of wilderness near sensitive borders, with 15 highly trained soldiers and cutting-edge surveillance gear. They prided themselves on detecting any threat long before it reached their perimeter. Yet, on this frigid morning, all their advanced security measures proved useless against the determination of one desperate mother bear. The base's alarms had barely stopped ringing when she appeared, not with aggression or fear, but with a purpose that would soon become clear to everyone present. What unfolded over the next 3 days would not only challenge everything these hardened soldiers believed about wild animals, but also lead to a discovery that would rattle the entire military command. Captain Vorn was about to learn that sometimes the greatest acts of courage come from the most unexpected places. Captain Vorn's first instinct was to follow standard military protocol, neutralize any threat that breached their security. But something about this bear's behavior made him pause. The massive animal wasn't charging or attacking. Instead, it stayed in a submissive stance, occasionally lifting its head to make soft, almost pleading sounds that echoed through the silent compound. The base's wildlife expert, Sergeant Tobin Reese, quickly pointed out how extraordinary this behavior was. Brown bears were known for their aggressive, territorial nature, especially when cornered. They never willingly approached human settlements unless searching for food, and they certainly didn't show submission to humans. This bear was breaking every rule they knew about wild animal behavior. As the morning wore on, more unusual details emerged. The bear's fur was matted with ice and snow, suggesting it had traveled a long distance. Its paw prints in the snow showed it had circled the base multiple times before making its desperate entry. Most striking was the lack of fear it displayed, despite being surrounded by armed soldiers. The bear's eyes seemed to carry an intelligence and urgency that unsettled even the most seasoned troops. Captain Vorn ordered his men to hold their positions but refrain from firing. He had served in many tough situations before, but this one demanded a different approach. The bear's desperate actions hinted that this wasn't a random encounter. There had to be a reason for such bizarre behavior. The base's security cameras revealed more puzzling details. Footage from the previous night showed the bear had been observing the base for hours, studying patrol patterns and personnel movements. This level of calculated behavior was unprecedented. It was almost as if the bear had planned its approach, waiting for the perfect moment to make its dramatic entrance. Sergeant Reese noticed something else. The bear was a nursing mother. Her behavior suggested she had cubs somewhere, but no young bears appeared in any of the security footage. This detail changed everything. If she had left her cubs behind to seek human help, something dire must have happened. The situation grew even more intriguing when they reviewed thermal imaging from their perimeter cameras. The bear's body temperature showed signs of exhaustion, hinting she'd been traveling for hours without rest. Her tracks in the snow supported this theory, stretching far into the wilderness along a winding path that seemed to lead somewhere specific. As the hours passed, the bear's behavior grew increasingly urgent. She would rise occasionally, take a few steps toward the wilderness, then return to her submissive position, all while making those same pleading sounds. It was as if she was trying to communicate something precise, trying to get them to follow her. The base's communication officer reported the incident to Regional Command, but the response only heightened the tension. No other military installation or civilian settlement in the area had ever reported anything like this. This was uncharted territory. Captain Vorn knew he faced a tough choice. Military protocol strictly forbade leaving the base for unauthorized missions, especially to follow a wild animal. But his years of experience taught him that sometimes the most critical decisions weren't found in any manual. After hours of observing the bear, Captain Vorn called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. The discussion was heated, with opinions split. Some argued it was too risky to abandon the base's security for what might be a futile chase. Others believed they had a moral duty to investigate, especially if cubs were involved. The debate raged until Sergeant Reese shared a troubling observation. The bear's urgency was growing, and she showed signs of physical distress. Captain Vorn reflected on his decades of military service. He'd faced combat, natural disasters, and countless emergencies. But this was different. This wasn't about strategy or protocol, it was about doing what was right. Looking at his team, he saw the same realization in their eyes. Making his decision, Vorn organized a small rescue team. He selected 4 of his most experienced soldiers, including Sergeant Reese for his wildlife expertise. They equipped themselves with medical supplies, emergency rations, tranquilizer guns, and survival gear. No one knew what they'd find, but they had to be ready for anything. Before leaving, Vorn set strict protocols. A communication schedule with the base, emergency backup arrangements, and a detailed map of their planned route based on the bear's tracks. The remaining soldiers would stay on high alert at the base, prepared to respond if anything went wrong. As they prepared to depart, the bear's behavior shifted dramatically. She grew more animated, as if sensing their decision to help. Her distressed sounds turned to soft huffs, and she began moving toward the tree line, constantly looking back to ensure they followed. The tracking wouldn't be easy. A fierce winter storm had worsened, cutting visibility and making the terrain treacherous. The bear's tracks revealed she'd come from the northwest, through some of the area's roughest landscape. The team would need to navigate dense forest, steep slopes, and possibly unstable ice formations. Darkness was closing in, a challenge in the short winter daylight. They had only a few hours before night fell, making their mission even riskier. Captain Vorn knew they were racing against time. The bear seemed to grasp their difficulties, moving at a pace they could follow safely, occasionally pausing to check they were still behind her. Her behavior continued to astonish the team. This was no mindless creature, but one showing remarkable intelligence and purpose. As they ventured deeper into the wilderness, Vorn noticed something else concerning. The bear's tracks showed she'd made this journey multiple times recently. Whatever drove her to seek human help must have been desperately important for her to repeat such an exhausting trek. The team kept radio contact with the base, reporting their position every 15 minutes as they moved through the forest. The bear led them along paths that seemed deliberately chosen for human passage, avoiding the deadliest winter hazards. After nearly 2 hours of careful tracking, the terrain began to shift. The dense forest opened into a small clearing, and the bear grew more agitated, moving with heightened urgency, her powerful muscles tense with anticipation. The team readied themselves, checking their gear one last time. Whatever they were about to find had driven a wild animal to trust humans, an unthinkable act. As they neared the clearing, none of them were prepared for the shocking scene ahead. What the rescue team discovered would haunt them for years. Trapped in an old, abandoned mining shaft were 2 bear cubs, barely moving in the freezing temperatures. The shaft, a relic from the region's gold rush days, had partially collapsed, creating a deadly trap for the young bears. The cubs had fallen through a hidden opening, dropping nearly 15 feet into the frozen pit. The walls were too smooth and steep for them to climb out, and too narrow for their mother to reach them. She'd been forced to watch helplessly as her cubs fought to survive. The situation was worse than they'd imagined. The cubs had been trapped for days, their mother's tracks around the shaft showing her desperate attempts to save them. The ground was torn up from her digging, and broken branches scattered about revealed she'd tried pushing them into the hole for her cubs to climb. Sergeant Reese quickly assessed the cubs' condition. They were severely dehydrated and hypothermic. The smaller cub barely moved, making weak whimpers that pierced the hearts of even the toughest soldiers. The larger cub was slightly more active but fading fast. The mother bear's actions now made perfect sense. After exhausting every option, she'd made an extraordinary choice to seek help from the only beings she thought could save them. Her intelligence in choosing a military base with its equipment and trained personnel showed astonishing instinct. Captain Vorn immediately radioed the base, requesting ropes, harnesses, and a portable heating system to prevent the cubs from going into shock during the rescue. Time was critical as the temperature dropped with approaching darkness. The team leapt into action. The 15-foot shaft posed numerous challenges. Its icy walls and years of erosion made it dangerously unstable. One wrong move could collapse it entirely, burying the cubs. Vorn ordered emergency lighting set up around the shaft's opening as the winter sun dipped low, casting long shadows. They had to work fast, but haste could be fatal. The mother bear watched their every move, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air as she shifted anxiously. Sergeant Reese's assessment uncovered more complications. The shaft's bottom was well below freezing, and the cubs had endured these conditions for days. The walls were too narrow for an adult to descend safely, and mechanical equipment risked a cave-in. They'd rely on basic rescue gear and careful planning. The team inventoried their resources: rescue ropes, harnesses, emergency blankets, and basic medical supplies. With these simple tools, they'd attempt something unprecedented: rescuing wild bear cubs from a mining shaft while their mother watched. Securing the area came first. The soldiers cleared loose snow and debris, setting up a sturdy anchor point for their ropes. Every move was deliberate. The ground near the shaft's edge could crumble at any moment. The mother bear's constant presence added tension to their work. Crafting a rescue harness for a bear cub required quick thinking. They adapted their gear, using blankets to create a secure cradle to lift the cub without causing further harm. The bigger challenge was getting the frightened cub into it. The stronger cub, though weak, still showed signs of life, tracking the harness as it was lowered, letting out small whimpers that echoed up the shaft. The mother bear responded with soft huffs of encouragement, somehow seeming to grasp that this strange device was meant to help. Lowering the harness demanded steady hands and precision. The team used a pulley system for smooth movement, with 2 soldiers on the main line and another on backup. The narrow shaft left little room for error. Any swing could injure the cub or destabilize the walls. The tensest moment came when the harness reached the bottom. The stronger cub, despite its exhaustion, showed typical wild animal fear of the odd object. The team waited anxiously as it slowly investigated. Minutes stretched like hours, hoping the young bear would sense this was its chance. Whether by luck or instinct, the cub eventually settled into the cradle, perhaps urged by its mother's soft sounds from above. The team seized the moment, carefully securing the harness around its weakened body. The mother bear's behavior during these crucial moments amazed everyone. She stayed calm, watching with what seemed like understanding. Her only movements were small steps forward when her cub cried, followed by quick retreats, as if reminding herself to trust these humans. Lifting the cub was the riskiest part. Captain Vorn positioned his men carefully, 2 on the main rope, 2 on safety lines, and 1 ready with medical supplies. The mother bear's growing anxiety was clear as her cub rose, but she held her ground, eyes locked on her baby's ascent. Every inch brought new challenges. The cub, frightened by the movement, struggled in the harness, sending dirt and ice cascading down the shaft walls. The team paused repeatedly, letting it calm before proceeding. Any sudden move could collapse the walls or tangle the harness. The cold worsened everything. Ropes stiffened, soldiers' hands numbed despite gloves, and ice on the shaft walls threatened to snag the harness. Halfway up, a crisis struck. A wall section broke loose, sending frozen earth toward the second cub below. The team faced a split-second choice: steady lifting or a faster pull that might save the cub from debris but risk the shaft's stability. Vorn's command was sharp: maintain steady progress. His experience warned against panic. The soldiers followed, continuing despite the heart-stopping sound of debris hitting the shaft's bottom. The mother bear's reaction during this crisis was extraordinary. When the wall collapsed, she stepped forward instinctively but forced herself to stop, showing remarkable trust despite her instincts screaming to act. As the first cub neared the surface, new issues arose. Ice on the rope made it slippery, demanding perfect coordination. The cub grew erratic, sensing freedom yet trapped in the unfamiliar harness. After what felt like hours but was about 40 minutes, the first cub reached the surface. The moment was tense. This was the first time the mother would see humans handle her cub directly. The team moved cautiously, knowing maternal instincts could override her restraint. Sergeant Reese took the lead, gently removing the harness while speaking softly. The cub, though weak, showed signs of life, relieving everyone. Its fur was matted with ice and dirt, but it had no serious injuries beyond exhaustion and cold. The mother bear's reaction to seeing her first cub safe was unlike anything the soldiers had witnessed. She approached cautiously, making soft sounds her cub responded to instantly. After checking her baby, she did something unexpected. She looked at Reese, then back at the shaft, clearly signaling her second cub still needed help. The first rescue had strained the team and equipment. Ropes wore from ice and friction, and the shaft's condition worsened. But there was no time to lose. The second cub, smaller and weaker, remained trapped, its condition far more critical. While they'd saved its sibling, the smaller cub had grown weaker, barely moving at the shaft's bottom. Falling debris from the first rescue had worsened things, partially burying it in dirt and ice. Time was slipping away. Captain Vorn knew they needed a new approach. The shaft's walls were too unstable for another harness rescue, and the cub was too frail to help itself. After a quick assessment, he made a decision against all military protocol. Someone had to go down. The risks were immense. The walls could collapse, the temperature was plummeting as night neared, and the mother bear might not stay calm with a human near her cub. Yet they had no choice. It was this or let the cub die. Sergeant Reese volunteered without hesitation. As the wildlife expert, he was best suited to handle the cub. The team modified their gear, creating a system to lower Reese headfirst into the narrow opening, secured by multiple safety lines. The mother bear seemed to sense the urgency, moving closer to the shaft as they prepared Reese's descent. Her continued trust amazed the team. No aggression, just faith in their efforts. Reese's descent was agonizingly slow. The shaft walls crumbled with every move, sending debris downward. The bottom was colder than expected, and the tight space barely let him move his arms. His headlamp revealed a grim reality. Parts of the wall were caving in. Reaching the cub was just the start. The small bear was partially buried and unresponsive. Reese worked one-handed, digging around it while holding his position. Every move brought more dirt and ice down, threatening to bury them both. Above ground, tension mounted. The mother bear paced, her soft sounds growing distressed as she sensed her cub's dire state. The team monitored the safety lines, now responsible for 2 lives in the unstable shaft. When Reese finally reached the cub, relief mixed with worry. The tiny bear was cold, its breathing faint. He wrapped it in a thermal blanket, cradling it for warmth, but the ascent loomed as the greatest danger. Just as they began pulling, disaster struck. A large wall section gave way, sending frozen earth cascading down. The team pulled faster, racing against the collapsing structure. Reese curled around the cub, shielding it from debris as the team hauled with all their strength. The mother bear roared but held her ground, as if knowing interference would doom them. In the final desperate moments, they pulled Reese and the cub up as the shaft crumbled completely. He emerged just seconds before it caved in, clutching the motionless cub. The cold air hit as the team pulled them clear. The shaft vanished in dust and snow, but there was no time to celebrate. The cub's breathing was weak, its body dangerously cold. The mother bear's distress was palpable as she moved closer despite her fear of humans. The team sprang into action, adapting their training to this unprecedented crisis. They set up an emergency treatment area with portable heaters, using medical supplies meant for humans to save a baby bear. Sergeant Reese, still covered in dirt and ice, worked with the team's medic to clear the cub's airways, wrapping it in thermal blankets to raise its temperature. The mother bear watched, her first cub pressed against her, both focused on the humans saving their family. Hours became a fierce battle against time and cold. The team worked in shifts, monitoring vital signs, using warm water bottles, heating pads, and their own body heat to revive the cub. Each small improvement was a victory, each setback met with resolve. The mother bear's behavior grew even more remarkable. She made soothing sounds when the cub stirred and stepped back when the soldiers adjusted equipment, her trust unwavering. As midnight neared, supplies dwindled, but the cub still needed care. Captain Vorn radioed the base for more medical gear and equipment for an extended operation. They'd stay as long as necessary. Dark moments came when the cub's breathing faltered, once stopping entirely. The medic cleared its airways while everyone held their breath. The mother bear's pleading sounds were heartbreaking, yet she held back, trusting the humans. By morning, both cubs showed incredible progress. The smaller cub moved and responded, while its sibling took water. The mother bear's relief showed in her relaxed stance and gentle nuzzles. Over the next 3 days, the team camped, providing constant care as the cubs recovered. The mother bear stayed near, gradually accepting food and water from the soldiers, forging an unprecedented bond. When the cubs were strong enough to walk, she prepared to lead them back into the wilderness. Before leaving, she approached Captain Vorn, stopping just feet away, holding his gaze for several moments. With a soft huff, she turned and led her cubs into the forest, vanishing among the trees. The incident reshaped military protocol in the region. The base surveyed abandoned mining sites, securing dozens of hazards, and established new wildlife response procedures prioritizing assessment and rescue over defense. Years later, soldiers occasionally spotted a large female bear with 2 healthy cubs in the distance. Though uncertain it was the same family, these bears never showed aggression toward humans, seeming to share a unique understanding with the base personnel. The story of the mother bear's incredible trust and the soldiers' brave rescue spread through military and wildlife circles, proving that sometimes the greatest courage comes from believing in the good of others, even those we're taught to fear. What would you have done in Captain Vorn's position? Would you have trusted your instincts and helped the desperate mother bear? Share your thoughts below. Thanks for reading. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible true stories of remarkable animal encounters.